Hello, my name is J.C. Bowman. I'm the Executive Director of Professional Educators of Tennessee. It's our privilege to serve educators across the state. And one of the requirements for the Tennessee General Assembly is that all educators undergo ethics training. We have developed this ethics training in conjunction with the Tennessee Department of Education. So I would like to share with you so that you may share with your colleagues and administrators this training, and you're welcome to share. And we hope that this will serve your needs. And the most important thing is we hope that none of our educators in the state have to face an education issue involving ethics. This is Professional Educators of Tennessee training on the Teacher Code of Ethics. We normally conduct training with the Tennessee Department of Education, and we are grateful for their assistance as we develop this training. Values tell us what's good. They're the things we strive for, desire, and seek to protect. Principles tell us what's right, which outline how we may or may not achieve our values. Purpose is the reason for being, gives life to your values and principles. Ethics is the process of questioning, discovering, and defending our values, principles, and purpose. The Tennessee General Assembly has mandated that we conduct professional development training on ethics across the state. This is due to a number of issues. In 2006, there was a court case that actually brought about a lot of the ethics background in our state. The ruling was eventually settled in 2008, the Ripley versus Anderson County Board of Education, which ended up in Tennessee Supreme Court. In that, they said clearly that teachers are vitally important in the lives of children. A teacher should serve as a positive role model for her or his students and should endeavor to create a stable and non-threatening environment that is conducive to learning. This training will include Public Chapter 937 to amend the Tennessee Code annotated relative to the Teacher Training Code of Ethics. In addition, in 2018, revisions to the laws on teacher employment, ethics, and misconduct. These are found in Public Chapter 106, 935, Public Chapter 936, and Public Chapter 938. We want to give you the most comprehensive view of ethical conduct expected of our profession, including the 2010 Code of Ethics and the latest changes, again, that occurred in 2018. The Teacher Code of Ethics is in Public Chapter 937. As an educator, there's two main principles I want you to keep in mind. As an educator, you have obligations to students, and that is found in Tennessee Code Annotated 49.5-1003, and then you have an obligation to the education profession, and that is located in Tennessee Code Annotated 49.5-1004, and we're going to review that. 495-1001 is just simply defining the Teacher Code of Ethics. So when an administrator or an educator or anybody says the Teacher Code of Ethics, we take it straight out of the law, Public Chapter 937, and it says right here, this is where we find the Code of Ethics. Now, the legislative findings, and that's after the 2008 court case, in 2009, the Tennessee General Assembly started studying ethics in the state for educators. And they come up with this finding, which they call legislative findings. So that's the first part in 1002. And it says that an educator believing in the worth and dignity of each human being recognizes the supreme importance of the pursuit of truth, devotion to excellence, and the nurture of democratic principles. Essential to these goals is the protection of freedom to learn and the freedom to teach, the guarantee of equal educational opportunity for all. When you take a job as an educator in our state, you are accepting the responsibility to adhere to the highest ethical standards. And I believe that most educators, just in nature, the reason that you've even chosen this profession, that this is not a problem. I'd say 99.9% of our educators are already adhering to that. However, we need to go through the training because every year we see educators that are accused of failing to follow the Teacher Code of Ethics. It continues on. An educator recognizes the magnitude of the responsibility inherent to the teaching process, the desire for the respect and confidence of one's colleagues, of students, of parents, and of the members of the community provides the incentive to attain and maintain the highest possible degree of ethical conduct. And we'll talk about maintaining it later on in the slides. An educator shall strive, and when you see the word shall in any piece of legislation, that means you must do it. You shall strive to help each student realize the student's potential as a worthy and effective member of society. An educator, therefore, works to stimulate the spirit of inquiry, the acquisition of knowledge and understanding, and the thoughtful formulation of worthy goals. In fulfillment of this obligation to the student, an educator shall, and there's the word shall again, you must abide by all applicable federal and state laws. Now, every year, federal and state laws change. So that's going to be a difficult change or challenge for some educators as laws change. So for our members, one of the things that we do is we make sure we constantly update through correspondence to our members, and we make them aware of changes in the state law. We stay abreast with the legislature. We're working on the State Board of Education. We deal with other laws that come out that we deal with. But the federal laws have also changed. I mean, as you know, we've gone from No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, and now we've gone on to ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. So the laws have continually changed, and we keep our members updated on the changes in the law. I really encourage people to be a member of an organization so they can get these updates and they can keep abreast of that because it's part of the Code of Ethics. The number two thing going to be is it says not unreasonably restrain the student from independent action in the pursuit of learning. You must provide the student with professional education services in a non-discriminatory manner and in consonance with accepted best practices known to the educator. Every once in a while, you'll see an educator charged with not following accepted best practices. So we've tried to make sure we have professional development, and other organizations offer that as well. But it's important that you keep posted and keep up to date with what's going on in your profession. Number four, respect the constitutional rights of the students. Students do have rights. An educator shall, here we go again, not unreasonably deny the student access to various points of view. A student is entitled to his point of view, so keep that in mind. You cannot deliberately suppress or distort subject matter relevant to the student's progress. 7, you must make reasonable effort to protect the student from conditions harmful to learning or to health and safety. Now, I want to talk about safety for just 1 second. It's very important that we understand that safety is one of the most critical issues right now. And I hate to talk about a sad subject, but we see a lot of school shootings and discipline breakdowns and different things at schools. So safety is one of the key things that you've got to protect on. We serve on the safety panel for the state. Other organizations, other groups do as well. But school safety is utmost importance. Protecting our teachers, our educators, and our students are what we have to make sure that we are doing. But one of the things in that, just a couple side notes, 95% of all school shootings are conducted, are done by students who are currently enrolled in that school. So when you see examples of bullying and stuff like that, it's very important to step in and to do that. And I know of no educator that would allow bullying in schools. So pay attention to that. And if you've got any questions or anything, you should always talk to a school administrator or guidance counselor. The other thing on safety that I would bring up is that obviously that it's important that you undergo thorough, that you're making sure that you're doing everything to keep students safe. And so I want to make sure we do that. We also have some trainings on safety as well, and we do trainings on that. 8, make reasonable effort to protect the emotional well-beings of the students. Now, we see children who come from all sorts of backgrounds. We have no choice where they come from. We take every child in public education. It's the beauty in what we do. But one of the things that you have to remember is that some kids are not stable when they come in. They don't come from a stable home life. There may not be an adult in their life that is guiding them. So if you have any question about the well-being of a student, I really want to encourage you to talk to your guidance counselor and to bring this to their attention and see if they're getting any help. So that's also part of the effort that we have to make sure to protect the child. An educator shall, here we go again, you cannot intentionally expose the student to embarrassment or disparagement. Now, that's very important that we look at that. And the reason that's in red is because we're starting to see a lot of teachers being accused of embarrassing kids. And in most cases, it's, simple things. But as our general counsel likes to remind us, if you're in the front of the classroom and somebody's acting out, obviously you should take action. You should mention to the student, Johnny, you need to calm down. You need to not do that. That's okay. But if it's something that Johnny is doing that you feel, or maybe Johnny hasn't done something, and in my example, I like to use maybe a child, maybe other students have come to you and told you that a child has not taken a bath and that they do not smell very nice. That's one of the things. Well, obviously you don't embarrass that child in front of the classroom. So what you might do is have him after class and talk to him about hygiene or some activity like that. But you would do it when that. And two things. It's going to be very important when you do talk to that child that you do it in a very adult manner. That if there's a possible witness, another teacher that you can do that with, that would be a good thing to protect yourself. So that's one of the things we want to do. But we are seeing constantly that's starting to be brought up. Parents come in and teachers embarrass my child. So be aware of that issue. That's why we have that in red. 10, you cannot, on the basis of race, color, creed, disability, sex, national origin, marital status, political or religious beliefs, family, social, cultural background, or sexual orientation, unfairly, A, exclude the student from participation in any program, deny benefits to the student, or grant any advantage to that student. An educator shall not use the professional relationship, the student, for private advantage. Now let me talk about that for 1 second. One of the things that might be, and I this is going to be some humorous, but I had a student in one of my classes as I taught, whose parents owned the local bake shop, and one of the things they sent every day were donuts to school. Now that was a great thing as an educator. Love donuts, but the student still got a C because that's the grade that he deserved. But you can't do things like that because you have a relationship with the student to your advantage. So keep that in mind. We're seeing a couple examples of that. Not disclose information about the student obtained in the course of the educator's professional service. Now that's a lifetime. Unless disclosure of the information is permitted, serves a compelling professional purpose, or is required by law. So for example, you get called into a court of law and you know that a student with special ed, you may share that information in a court of law with a judge or the attorney of the defense, but you couldn't come out and talk about a student out in town. If a candidate, if somebody runs for office and you know something about him politically, or not politically, educationally, you might say, well, I can't see how he could be mayor. He made straight D's. You can't do that. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. 13, you cannot knowingly make false or malicious statements about students or colleagues. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But one of the worst things we're seeing across the state is obviously that we talk about our colleagues. And I've got to tell you that that's both unprofessional and that will violate the code of ethics. Be very careful and what you say about your other teachers, your fellow educators. Do not say statements that you know is either untrue or designed to harm the individual. On social media, if you know that Miss Jones is getting divorced, don't put that on your social media. Mrs. Jones is getting divorced. Just don't do that. And social media is a whole different animal as well. And so we'll have that conversation. Number 14, ensure interactions with the student take place in a transparent and appropriate settings. Now, that's what we're talking about. If you're going to do a conversation with a student, make sure if it's a female student and you're a male teacher, make sure that the door is open. If you've got a colleague who can sit in with you, that's another thing that you want to do. You want to make sure it's appropriate. And you don't want to take a female student as a male teacher in a coat closet to share something with. That is not going to end well for you. And, so make sure that you do everything above board, transparently, and that you can defend. As my principal, when I taught school, used to tell me, put me in a position that defends you. So I want to encourage you to make sure you're doing transparent and appropriate settings. An educator shall. Here's the one that was added to the legislation, and this is the one that has gotten a lot of attention. You cannot engage in any sexually related behavior with the student, whether it's verbal, written, physical, or electronic, with or without the student's consent. Keep in mind, with or without the student's, even if the student says, text me something, do not do that. You shouldn't have that student's number. He shouldn't have yours. Sexually related behavior includes, but is not limited to, behaviors such as making sexual jokes or sexual remarks, engaging in sexual kidding, sexual teasing, or sexual innuendos. Pressure the student for dates or sexual favors, engaging in inappropriate physical touching, groping or grabbing, kissing, rape, threatening physical harm, or committing sexual assault. These will not only get you thrown out of the teaching profession, they will probably draw you a lawsuit, and they will probably also get you arrested. So I want to make sure you understand, you cannot do these types of activities. So this is one that is grown, and it's going to continue to grow, and you've got to be careful, and you've got to watch yourself in this. No jokes, no touching. And so I hope everybody is clear on that. I want to leave this here for just a second. An educator shall, you cannot furnish alcohol or illegal or unauthorized drugs to the student. Pretty clear and cut and dry on that. You cannot strive to prevent, you must strive to prevent the use of alcohol or illegal or unauthorized drugs by the student when the student is under the educator's supervision on school or LEA premises during school activities or in any private setting. The example there, a teacher walks in, we've had this happen, teacher walks in, he goes into a bar setting in a urban area, and he walks in, and sitting there are some students from his school, and they are underage and they are drinking, and he sits down at the table with them. And what happened was that teacher got reported, because obviously they get in trouble, they get home, you were drinking and whatever, and the answer comes back. Mr. Smith was even there. The next day, Mr. Smith was called into the office to explain why he was at the situation, while he was there, and why didn't he tell them they couldn't do that. Mr. Smith subsequently got in trouble. So make sure you're keeping aware that you cannot do that, not just only during school activities, but in any private setting. 18, you must refrain from the use of alcohol while on school or LEA premises or during a school activity in which students are present. And this is one of the things that differ from district to district. So I want to make sure we're clear about that. General rule of thumb is, just in general, do not post pictures of yourself on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram. Do not post pictures of yourself holding any alcoholic beverages. Just keep that in mind, or holding any illegal drugs. Do not do these things. But also keep in mind, do not, while you're doing that, also do not show up to an event after you've been out drinking with friends. Don't go to a ball game on a Friday night after you've been out. Stop by happy hour for the at your local bar. Do not do that. If you're going to stop by the happy hour, you go home. Preferably, you don't drive. You call a cab or Uber or Uber or something like that. But do not show up to a school activity or a school dance or anything after you've been drinking. You will get in trouble for that if you're caught or found out. And then number 19, maintain a professional approach with the student at all times. You're the professional, they're the student. Just keep that in mind. We've seen teachers charged with that, failure to maintain a professional approach with the student. That's in the eyes of the beholder. As long as you can justify your behavior, you're probably going to be okay. 495-1004, educator's obligation to the education profession. The education profession is vested by the public with a trust and responsibility requiring the highest ideals of professional service, and the belief that the quality of the services of the education profession directly influences the nation and its citizens. The educator shall exert every effort to raise professional standards, to promote a climate that encourages the exercise of professional judgment, to achieve conditions which attract persons worthy of the trust of careers in education, and to assist in preventing the practice of the profession by unqualified persons. Cannot assist in the helping people get into your profession that you know are not qualified. In fulfillment of this obligation, the profession and educator shall not, number one, deliberately make a false statement or fail to disclose a material fact related to the competency and qualifications in an application for a professional position. Here's what we're talking about right here, and this is probably going to be helpful. You know that a certain teacher has been charged with some crime. They resign. They go into another school district, and they list you as a reference. You get called, and you say, and they go, "How is Mr. Jones? Is he a good teacher? Is he a good person?" "Oh, he's great. He's phenomenal. You know, anything that would prevent us from hiring Mr. Jones?" No, I don't know a thing. You know, now you can say that answer is that, I'm not his employer. I don't work with him. You need to call central office. You can do whatever you want if you don't feel like doing that. But be careful there. In general, when people call us, we tell them one thing. We say, they were employed here at these dates. They worked here from this date to this date. And that's in general, would you like to, unless you're really a fan of that person, that's all you're obligated to share was that they were employed from this date to that date. So be careful with that. And this is mainly for a lot of administrators. We don't see teachers get into that a lot. Number 2, you shall not misrepresent the educator's professional qualifications. Number 3, assist the entry into the profession of a person known to be unqualified in respect to character, education, or other relevant attribute. A funny thing, my brother-in-law gets out of prison. He learned to work on automobiles in there. We need a shop teacher. I think cousin Bill or my brother-in-law Billy would be a great addition to teach shop down there. Don't refer him to them. Don't get involved in that issue. He's got a character problem. Sorry if anybody's got a brother-in-law named Billy, but that would be one of the things that you don't want to do that. You can be charged if something gets discovered with assisting entry to the profession. I don't see that a lot, but it does happen, so we just want to make you aware of that. Number 4, knowingly make a false statement concerning the qualifications of a candidate for a professional position. Pretty clear there. An educator shall not assist a non-educator in the unauthorized practice of teaching. Number 6, shall not disclose information about colleagues obtained in the course of professional service unless the disclosure serves a compelling professional purpose or is required by law. Again, the best thing to not do is talk about your colleagues. We know this. If you've got a problem with a colleague, you should go confront the colleague, talk to the colleague in a professional manner, discuss some things, how you can work together, and hopefully do that. Don't talk about that individual behind their back. Don't share false and malicious statements about them, which is the next one. Particularly, this will get you in a lot of trouble. We see that a lot of times. We see people post things. Coach Smith's having an affair with Mrs. Jones. Not true. You can get charged with various issues with that, but more importantly, you will get in trouble. So do not knowingly make a false or malicious statement about a colleague. Talked about that. Cannot accept any gratuity, gift, or favor that might impair or appear to influence professional decisions or actions. We talked about that. If you're a baseball coach, the guy that owns the largest construction company in the community comes by and offers to buy baseball uniforms, and of course he'd like to see his son play center field. That's just not good. Don't do that. Use illegal or unauthorized drugs. I think most people know what that is. Do not use illegal or unauthorized drugs. You cannot, here we go again, C, fulfillment of the obligation to the profession, educators shall administer state-mandated assessments fairly and ethically. Let me say this for a minute. We've worked very carefully on reducing the amount of testing. We will continue to work on that. We think that we over-test in our state. We agree with that. We would like to see smart tests. We'd like to see tests very easily done. It shouldn't take a bulk of your time. We think the job that you do as a teacher is the most classroom time teaching the student is the most effective use of your time, not preparing for a test. That being said, we get calls every year from a number of teachers who will call in and say, do I have to give the state test? And the answer is, yes, you do. And right here is why. You have to give, and make sure you're clear about this, administer state-mandated assessments fairly and ethically. And on the fairly piece of it and the ethically piece, the other side of that coin is as rules change and we do things, some people want to go, well, I can do this a different way. I can, we have new rules and regulations. We don't want to follow those. Follow the guidelines that the state sends out. Don't just do what you want to do. Very important. Number 2, you got to conduct yourself in a manner that preserves the dignity and integrity of the education profession. I'm going to say this again. 99.9% of the teachers in this state are never going to have a problem with this. I believe this is a field that you've chosen to go into because you are people of high character and high integrity. And I don't see that being done. This is in that law and it's been brought down, and it's just a reminder to us to have integrity and dignity and make sure that we're following the highest ethical standards. The State Board of Education shall post the Teacher Code of Ethics on its website. That's the State Board of Education. Now, let me encourage districts out there, because we have administrators and we do also have superintendents that will be listening to this Code of Ethics. So we want to make sure, I would encourage you to also put the Code of Ethics on your website. You need to look at this frequently, and I don't know how many times we sit down with a teacher who's been charged with violation of the Code of Ethics, and they tell us, I can't find it. I don't know where it is. How can I be charged with something that I don't understand? So I want to encourage, I mean, even at the school level, it might not be a bad idea to put the code of ethics on your website. 49.5.106, report of breach of teacher code of ethics. And we're going to address this a little bit more in a minute. Failure to report. Any educator, this is one of the things we're starting to see being charged by educators. Any educator who has personal knowledge of a breach by another educator of the teacher code of ethics prescribed at 49.5.103, 49.5.104. Here we go. You shall, that means you have to do it, report the breach to the educator's immediate supervisor, the director of schools, or local board of education within 30 days of discovering the breach. And let me encourage you, act sooner rather than later. So if you know of a teacher who has been involved in a sexual misconduct, you need to report that immediately. And we're going to get on down a little bit more as we discuss that. But you have an obligation to report any of those violations. If you know of somebody who is taking the state test for a student, you have got to report that to your supervisor. If the supervisor is the one doing it, report it to your director of schools. If you know that your director of schools is doing something, you need to report that to your local board of education within 30 days of discovering the breach. Again, this is rarely done, but we're beginning to see teachers that they'll say, well, Mr. Smith knew about it or Mrs. Jones knew about this, and they did nothing. And they too are getting called in, and we're having to provide legal services to them as well because they heard a rumor of something that went on. So again, doing that. Failure to report a breach of the teacher code of ethics or to file a report of any criminal activity or other misconduct that is required by federal or state law is a breach of the teacher code of ethics. LEAs must conduct annual professional development training concerning the teacher code of ethics and its requirement. That's what we're doing here. The professional development training shall address what constitutes unethical conduct. And we have also done that here today. Now let's continue on though. Training on teacher code of ethics, state approved teacher prep programs. So now as you come through your prep program, as you enter into the profession, you are also going to be required to participate in ethics training. So this is now located in the code of ethics. So as you go through your college prep program, you're going to have to also do as well as that. And we do provide training to colleges of ed, and it would be helpful, for us if a college of education wants to sit in on this training, we'll be glad to provide it live. Or in addition, some of our leaders can provide it live, or particularly we personally can provide this webinar to you to share with your students or doing that. So again, training is also required at the prep program, the colleges of ed, and other programs that the state has recognized to provide teacher licensure. Revisions to laws of teacher employment, ethics, and misconduct. Now, this likely would have happened in 2017. The state was working on some changes that needed to be made on the code of ethics. We'll get into that a little bit. And there was a lawsuit that was filed, subsequently dismissed. But what happened was we passed a more strenuous additions to the code of ethics, and that was added in 2018 in the General Assembly. So let's look at what they've added. In addition to the mandatory background check required, teachers or any other position that requires proximity to children at the time of application, the new law requires LEAs and charter schools to conduct background checks for teachers or any other position that requires proximity to children every 5 years. Now, let me give you a caveat on that. As you go through this, when you're initially hired, you're going to have to undergo a background check. Now, every 5 years, you're going to have to renew and go over that. Now, I expect that to change. And why do I expect that to change? because we are now going to be participating in the FBI Wrap Back program. The FBI Wrap Back program will provide automatic updates on an individual's criminal history to LEA participants. The LEA requirement for background checks every 5 years will likely be eliminated. Let me tell you what this is going to mean. When you sign up, I'm a former member of the Marine Corps, and so part of the military background is that you get your fingerprints and DNA and other things put into the FBI so that they have background information on you. So what's going to happen is that when you apply for that, you get fingerprinted, you get background checked, and all that. You're going to be entered into this FBI database program, and the database program will update it and keep it updated continuously. So if you go to another state, you live on the border, Mississippi, Memphis, you get charged with a crime in Mississippi, and you're thinking, well, I'm clear in Tennessee because it's not on my record. It's going to be entered into the FBI database, and your employer will ultimately be notified that you violated a crime. We see this a lot with, well, not a lot, but we've seen teachers get charged with DUIs in other states, and they've not reported it or not done anything, and then all of a sudden the district gets made aware of the situation, and that teacher has subsequently been in trouble and then is terminated. So keep in mind that the FBI is going to keep a record of you the rest of your life, ultimately, and we are probably, if we've not entered into that yet, we probably will within the next year into the FBI Wrap Back program. Here's a new addition to the law, 495-417. It requires a director of schools, director of public charter school, or director of non-public school who learns of the conviction of a licensed educator employed by the LEA, charter school, or non-public school for certain offenses to report the conviction to the State Board of Education. And let's go on down. It requires directors to report teachers who have been suspended or dismissed or who have resigned following allegations of conduct, including sexual misconduct, which if substantiated would warrant consideration for license suspension or revocation under State Board of Education rule to the State Board of Education, and they will take your license. So here is the example that I want to share with you on this. What has happened in the past is that a teacher will be accused of something illegal, whatever that may be, and the school board will, the superintendent of schools will just simply say, director of schools will say, look, if you'll resign, I'm not going to report you. If they do that, they are going to get in trouble. We've had a situation in Nashville, and I think it's constant. It's being on appeal. I don't know, but the superintendent of schools was charged and had his license suspended for failure to report a sexual misconduct situation. So, I encourage you to do that. He's appealing that, to my understanding. I don't know what the state will ultimately win, prevail or not, but do want to make sure you're aware they're willing to take superintendent license over this issue now. So they're going to have to do that. If you get suspended, you're going to have it's going to be a report sent to the state. If you're dismissed, it's going to be sent to the state. One of the things that we work with constantly is with the State Board of Education on our teacher, on their licensure. Now, I am alarmed by the number of licensure issues at the State Board of Education. That has increased. It's gone up substantially. On the other hand, we work very well with the State Board on our members who often either falsely, you can just simply get suspended and then nothing happened. An allegation could be made, and they've notified you, they've suspended you with or without pay, and they take your license, or they don't take your license, they put you on hold is what it's called. They put it in there, and you come through our organization, we're able to call the State Board and say, look, this was found unsubstantiated, our person's been cleared, we want that hold lifted, and we're able to do that by working with the State Board. That is a process that you have to follow. So I'm not trying to scare anybody here by doing that. But licensure issue is becoming a pretty serious issue with the state. So we want to make sure that you know that this is going to happen, and you're going to be put on the next part. It's going to be known. You're going to find that you could also, it's going to be in the paper. So we've talked about sexual misconduct again. I went very slow over that, but sexual misconduct, any sexual related behavior with a child or student, regardless of the age of the student, or whether verbal, nonverbal, written, physical, or electronic. Electronic's the one that people tend to send pictures. I don't know why people want to send pictures, but you send pictures, and we've seen that that just are inappropriate. Either they send them to you or you send them to them. The very first question is going to be, why do they have your number? Again, you want to give them a number, give them the school number. You want to give them an email address, give them the school, give them your official email address. If you have a Facebook page, let me encourage you, do not accept a student that is not a blood relative or a student at that school, but if they're not a blood relative under the age of 18. Do not accept that person as a friend. Years later, they're out in the community. They're 24 years old or whatever, that you want to be Facebook friends, that's great. They're your best friend. You have your best friend's child in class. That teacher is, that parent is now, you give little Emily a C, and she thinks little Emily deserves a A because she worked with the project on her and you're her friend, and you give little Emily a C. She goes through your Facebook page. She doesn't like you. We've seen instances of that. Got to tell you, you've got to be careful with social media. And as we do a whole new webinar on social media. You cannot make sexual jokes, sexual remarks, sexually suggestive comments. Again, engaging sexual kidding, sexual teasing, sexual innuendo, stay away from those things. You can't date or solicit dates or sexual favors from students. You're a 24-year-old teacher and you have a 18-year-old student. I'm sorry, they are not dating material. Find somebody your own age. Engaging in inappropriate physical contact or touching, groping again, and then committing an offense, and this is a new one under Title 39, Chapter 13, Part 5, against a child or a student. Let me mention this. I've got to say this to you, that most education law is in the Tennessee Code Annotated Chapter 49. That's the education. They're now moving some issues over to Chapter 39 because they're all encompassing in the community and they're designed to protect children. So Chapter 39, Chapter 13, Part 5 also is going to address that. 49.1302 requires the State Board of Education to transmit final disciplinary actions on educator licensure to the National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification, NASDAQ, Teacher National Clearinghouse. So if you're accused of a crime in Tennessee, you're entered into the FBI program, your records are going to be on file with the FBI. If that other state that you move to is part of that program, they're going to have access to your files. In addition to that, your name's going to be sent to the National Clearinghouse. So they're going to be able to go in and look and see if you've done that. The State Board of Education will post on its website all of its final disciplinary actions on educator licensure. So we tell people that on the front end, that's going to be on the and that's subject to being on the news. So keep that in mind. Here is a Tennessee Code Annotated 37.1403, reporting of brutality, abuse, neglect, or child sexual abuse. Any person, now this is a rule for the community, but you as a teacher are part of the community. Any person who has knowledge of or is called upon to render aid to any child who is suffering from or has sustained any wound, injury, disability, or physical or mental condition shall report such harm immediately. And the key word is immediately. They don't mean tomorrow. They don't mean next week. They mean immediately. If the harm is of such a nature as to reasonably indicate that it has been caused by brutality, abuse, or neglect, or that on the basis of available information reasonably appears to have been caused by brutality, abuse, or neglect. If a student comes in and they have a black eye, you are obligated to report that. And who do you report it to? You're going to report that. Any such person with the knowledge or the type of harm described in that subsection above, you shall report it by telephone or otherwise to the judge having juvenile jurisdiction over the child, to the department in a manner specified by the department, and they're talking about children and family right here, either by contacting a local representative of the department or by utilizing the department's centralized intake procedure. They have an intake procedure on their website where applicable. Here's the other one. The sheriff of the county where the child resides, or the chief law enforcement official of the municipality where the child resides. So if you're in Athens City Schools, you're going to talk to the chief of police of Athens. The sheriff that's in McMinn County, you're going to talk to the sheriff of McMinn County. Here's the key piece of this. SROs, you need to make sure that that's clear and defined in your school board policy, that the SRO is the representative of the sheriff. And this gets tricky because in some school districts, SROs are employed by the district. They are on loan or whatever. So it's careful that you don't violate that particular part of the law. And if that's the case, that they are an employee of the district, you're going to be obligated to report to either the sheriff or the chief law enforcement official, above and apart. And if the board policy says you're to report all things to the superintendent, we've seen this before, then board policies need to come into compliance with this part of the law. So we want to make sure that this too occurs. So making sure that you've done this. Now make sure, A, you've documented. I've telephoned this person on this date, on this time. I've sent an email. I've done the intake. I've got a copy of it. Make sure you have documented that you have reported this. We have seen cases where people have been charged with failure to report, and this is criminal. And what happens, you've got competing organizations. So in this particular case, district attorneys may take charge on these matters and charge you with failure to report, even though you may not have violated board policy at a school. So we want to make sure you have done this. If you suspect that brutality, abuse, neglect, or child sexual abuse, you must report that. Let's just go ahead and put this on there. LEAs cannot enter into non-disclosure agreements. We discussed that as a prerequisite to settlement of any sexual misconduct. You cannot assist others in obtaining employment if you know that person is engaged in sexual misconduct involving a minor or a student. Please, making sure that you know this. This mainly affects administrators, but if you're a teacher and you're called upon to assist that employee, make sure you know that you can be charged. And then finally, we have other webinars related to ethics. We worked with Christy Ballard from the Tennessee Department of Education. Christy is a phenomenal attorney. She knows state law. She's been doing it for 25 years at the highest levels. She's authored a lot of these documentations. And so we want to make sure, you know, Christy and Mike Shepard, our general counsel, has worked on these. This is a YouTube channel. We have our own YouTube channel, youtube.com ProEdTN. We have a lot of free webinars that we put on. They're available for that. If you have any licensure questions, you're going to go to the State Board of Education, Tennessee government website, go to SBE, State Board of Education, look under licensure. it'll make it clear as well. So finally, let me leave you with this. Professional Educators of Tennessee, if you have a question on ethics, we invite you to call. You can email our legal@proedtn.org. Our attorney will talk to you. You're going to talk directly to an attorney. It's one of the things that we do different than other associations. You're going to talk directly to an attorney on a legal matter. You're not going to talk to a non-attorney and decide, so it's very important that you know this. You're free to email and ask these questions. We answer questions on a regular basis. Most of these are common sense. They're right out of the law. But you're going to talk in a non-threatening situation where they're going to offer you an advice. And so we're going to offer to do that. Professional Educators of Tennessee has substantial professional development on ethics, on a host of other professional issues to keep you current in your profession. And so we want you to encourage you to do that. Visit our website, proedtn.org. You can call us 615-778-0803 anytime. It's our honor to serve educators across the state. We think that education is the most noble profession that you can enter into, and it's our honor to serve educators. And we just want to thank you for the opportunity. We hope this webinar was informationally accurate. I mean, we know it's informationally accurate, but we hope this was information that you could use. Most importantly, I want to make sure that those that listen to this webinar do not fall victim or do not do anything that would get them in trouble. So again, you're welcome to give us feedback. We welcome your input, and keep us posted. And if you have any questions, just simply email legal@proedtn.org, and our general counsel will be glad to answer those questions. Thank you.